Hello everyone, my name is Jeffrey Perera, and today I'm here at the Stanford University with Dr. Lynn Hildemann. She is a decorated environmental engineer whose research is focused on the source and dispersion of airborne particles indoors, and also the assessment of human exposure to these airborne pollutants. She's authored over 100 peer-reviewed publications, and on top of all of this, Dr. Hildemann is the Senior Associate Dean of Education at Stanford Doerr School of Sustainability, and also the Senior Associate Vice Provost for Undergraduate Education. Dr. Hildemann, I am delighted to be given the privilege to meet you and listen to your story in person.
Well, thank you for having me. Those two positions you named off, I have been in for 6 weeks each.
Oh wow!
They're brand new for
Well,
me,
congratulations!
and very exciting. Yeah.
So I'd like to start by asking you, who are you and what do you do?
So I'm a faculty member, a professor in civil and environmental engineering. I focus on environmental engineering. I got interested in air pollutants because I grew up in Los Angeles, and Los Angeles used to have lots and lots of air pollution, and so that's what I've chosen to focus on.
Take me back to your earlier years, from your childhood to studying environmental engineering as an undergrad. What was your upbringing like?
Middle-class family, grew up in West LA, loved the beach, hated the air pollution. Kept thinking when I was younger, why doesn't someone fix this? Why doesn't someone do something about it? And that's what attracted me into environmental engineering. The other thing I liked about engineering is that I was always really good at math, but always at the same time wanted to do something that was really useful, that helped society. So engineering is a wonderful way to combine together kind of quantitative skills with doing something that is helpful to people.
When you think back, what is your earliest memory of falling in love with these sciences?
I would have to say my late father was a biologist, and we would go out hiking. And he was great about, even though a lot of professors just lecture to people, he would engage me in conversations and want to know what I thought about some of the things we were seeing in nature. And it was just really fun to talk about it and to realize that you could suggest things that might not be true, but they were fine as hypotheses. So that's probably what first got me hooked on science.
Could you have seen yourself doing anything outside of a career invested in the environment?
I was always attracted to STEM, but when I was growing up, the women who worked in STEM were high school teachers, they were lab assistants, and so I always envisioned myself doing something in STEM, but my ambitions were much more modest when I was young because I didn't see any role models doing more ambitious things.
So in the rawest form, what is it like being a woman in environmental engineering?
I love engineering. It certainly has been challenging at times to be in an environment where there aren't many female role models, because it means that the students are all very much wanting to interact with you and be with you and learn from you and all that. I'd say the worst part is being asked, well, what do all women think about this or that? And you're always thinking to yourself, I'm not all women, I'm just me. But it's mostly been really fun, and it's wonderful to see how the field of engineering is diversifying more, and it's becoming less and less of a really big deal that I happen to be female.
What are some of the biggest challenges that you've faced throughout your career, and what was it that kept you going?
Early on in my career, I loved it. I didn't mind spending hours and hours each day and on the weekend working on it. When I finally had a child, I had to first for the first time in a long time, examine what they sometimes call that work-life balance. And, the truth is you can't do absolutely everything you might want to do. So that led me to realize that I need to periodically re-examine my work-life balance. The cool thing is you can decide on your own priorities, right? But the challenge is, there's some things you need to say, that's less important. I'm going to set it by the wayside, and you need to make sure that you're leaving some time for the parts of just your life that are important to you and not devote all your waking hours to work.
Tell me about some of the individuals that have had the most valuable impact on the trajectory of your life. What were the most valuable lessons that you learned from them?
Oh, I would say in terms of kind of, faculty members while I was a student. I learned things from them. Maybe there are things you wouldn't normally think you wanted to learn. I got some advice that kind of made me feel bad. I'm like, oh, okay, I must not be a very good scientist, or they wouldn't be giving me this advice to kind of not shoot too high. So what I learned from it is, ask a lot of different people. Don't just have one person tell you something and think, oh no, this is the secret's out. Maybe I'm not so good. And I was able to find mentors that were very helpful to me. And the other shift I needed to make was, since there were hardly any females where I went to school, I had to adapt to the notion, no, I don't need a female role model. These males that are around are just fine. I just need to shop around a little for one that I feel is listening to me and is able to share my vision.
As teenagers, we're often told the quote, "You're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with." What were your friends growing up like, and what sort of impact did they have on you, and to what extent do you agree with this statement?
That's a very interesting statement. I have to say I haven't heard that before. Thinking about my friends growing up, because I was taking mostly science and math classes in high school, I was in classes where there were only 1 or 2 or 3 women in the entire class. So some of my really good friends were men. And it was, in a way, very helpful to see, hey, you're just as smart as these guys. You've got things you can contribute. And I'd say the other way it helped me is to not be afraid to speak out and have my own opinions and thoughts.
Is my home a safe space from air pollutants? What pollutants are lurking in our homes, and where do they come from?
Yeah, it's funny. You think of your home as a place that kind of protects you from the outdoor air pollution, and that's totally true. But there are indoor sources of air pollutants as well. And the fact that the home has walls and roof means that it holds those pollutants indoors for a while. And so what you worry about are indoor sources. They could be cooking. I especially love, since I don't like to clean house, that cleaning can be a source of resuspending particles into the air, and those particles can include things you're allergic to. Those are just a couple examples of indoor sources that you can be concerned about. Other ones, you may have heard of new car smell.
Yeah.
Yeah, new car smell. That's great. What you're smelling are all the volatile organics coming off of the plastics and synthetic materials inside your car. And so maybe it's not such a good smell. So when you get that new carpeting or there's a new piece of furniture or a fresh coat of paint where you live, you're some of the things you're smelling in the air that are coming off of those new materials may not be so good for you.
Does it purposefully smell so good?
I don't know. I mean, you don't want to think things like baking smells are bad for you, right? But some of the volatile organics coming off are not especially good for you to be breathing.
How do we approach effectively managing air pollution? What level of community cooperation is necessary?
What level of community cooperation? I mean, certainly for outdoor air pollutants, there's a lot we can do, each of us as an individual, to kind of reduce emissions into the outdoor environment. Indoor air quality isn't regulated. They think of, a person's home as their castle. They can do whatever they want inside. And so it may be a little trickier to think, oh no, I love that cleaning product with the lemon fresh scent that I'm spraying all over the place, or the scent that you're releasing into the indoor environment. But for some sensitive people, it can really, really bother them. So that's, these are considerations to make, given that the average adult in the United States spends almost 90% of their time indoors. So a lot of the air you breathe every day is from the indoor environment.
How long has air pollution been an issue?
Oh, a long time, a very long time. I think of the Sistine Chapel where they had to clean the interior because the centuries of burning candles indoors had soiled all those beautiful alfrescoes to where they looked very dingy and grayish, and all the beautiful colors had been covered up by the soot from the candles.
How do you approach asking the right research questions? Are they based on publications you read, discussions you have with your peers, or are they shower thoughts?
I'd say all of the above, all of the above. I personally get especially excited about a research question if I find there has been very little previous work done, or the previous work I find, I immediately think, oh, that's not the right way to do that. There's this shortcoming or that flaw. And so I personally tend to be attracted to research questions that are especially complicated and gnarly.
Does pineapple belong on pizza?
Yes.
Yes. Tell me about a moment when it all clicked, when you knew you made the right career choice.
When did I know I made the right career choice? I would say kind of the way it clicked. I had finished my bachelor's. I'd actually studied both biology and engineering. I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do next. Since my father was a biologist, I had kind of an idea of what that career track looked like. But since I didn't have a single member of my family who was an engineer, I went and worked for an engineering firm. And I loved it. It was a really nice place to work. But what clicked for me after a year or so was that there were problems we were working on I wanted to spend a lot more time on and dig much more deeply into. And I'd be told, no, Lynn, we've done what we promised in the contract. You need to move on. And I'd be like, oh, but this is so interesting. If you just give me a few more days, I could really dig into it. And so what I realized about myself is I really get excited about digging deeply into complicated problems. I'm not just satisfied with the first kind of fairly superficial answer you might give for it. And that made it click for me, hey, you really do need to go back and get a PhD and work in academia where you can dig as deeply as you want.
What are some of these complicated problems that you mentioned that you experienced in the engineering firm?
The engineering firm, for example, looking at kind of like if you had a pond that things were evaporating from, an evaporative pond, figuring out at what rate the evaporative emissions were being released. And they had this very empirical formula that they used. And I was immediately like, well, but wait, they're not considering wind speed, and they're not considering this and that and that. And I said, like, let me spend a couple days digging around the literature. I bet people have done work on this. And they're like, no, this is the well-established technique. We're going to go with it.
Describe the most thrilling experience in your career thus far. What keeps you coming back?
What keeps me coming back? I've talked a lot about research. The other thing I really love about my job is teaching and mentoring students. And you just meet some of the most incredible young adults here at a university setting. They're all so different, and they have such unique ways of looking at the world. I know nobody goes to cocktail parties anymore. I never really liked cocktail parties. But imagine going to a party where there's all strangers, and instead of thinking, oh God, I'm not going to know anyone, you think, oh, I can't wait to meet these people. They're all so interesting. I know I'm going to be absolutely fascinated. That's how I feel when I meet a new group of students each time. And so that's the other really fun thing for me.
What is a lesson you heard a lot as a child that you only truly understood when you experienced it for yourself?
I have no idea. Let me think about that. Lesson I learned as a child. I'd say it was a lesson I learned from my mom. She was always so nice to other people, even if that other person was maybe a little angry or annoyed or upset. And as a kid, I used to think, oh, come on, Mom, just tell him to get over it. But she was modeling for me the respect that you should show to people, and respect in particular for their feelings. And I've come to realize, but not until I was well into adulthood, that that's a really good way to interact with people.
Where do you go and what do you do when you need to solve a problem?
When I need to solve a problem, a lot of my research involves field work. And so, I'm often kind of wandering around the location to think more about kind of what are all the variables we can't control for and things that we're wanting to do. I'm also really into walking late at night, which sounds kind of weird, I know. Luckily, I live in a very safe neighborhood where I'm not going to frighten the neighbors by going out for walks at 11 at night. But the funny thing is, I'm not usually actively thinking about it. I'm trying to kind of clear my mind. But often after doing that, I'll come back and I'll suddenly think, oh, it's all clear now. I know what I need to do.
What would you say you brought with you to the table during big conversations?
What did I bring to the table during big conversations? I'd say two types of things. I'm good at staying focused on the big picture and bringing the other people at the table back to kind of, let's stay focused on the big picture. Let's not get into the weeds. And I also have gotten good. I didn't used to be good at this, but I also have developed the ability to make sure you hear from everyone and hear fully from everyone. Because often there's just a few people at the table doing most of the talking, but the quieter ones, boy, they have some interesting things to share. If you, as the member of that group around the table, can engage with them and make sure they're sharing as well.
Describe to me, step by step and in detail, the steps that you have taken to reach the level of success that you have.
Oh, step by step. I've never aimed for success. I've aimed for interesting research areas to me. I've aimed for really enjoying my interactions with students and thinking a lot about how I can be helpful to them. But I actually never had sort of this career path that said, oh yeah, by age this, I'm going to be at this particular place. And I'd say the reason is that the typical path is more winding than that. It's life is what happens when you made a plan and then all of a sudden that plan isn't going to work. So I'm more about kind of thinking ahead maybe to the next year. What new things do I want to try? What do I want to get better at? What might I want to start looking into as a new research topic? But I'm never looking toward kind of this is the level of fame or renown I want to reach. That just doesn't bring me satisfaction.
What was the most exciting aspect of being a leader of one of the greatest universities in the world? I know you mentioned you've been in this position for 6 months.
No, 6 weeks.
Oh, 6 weeks. Expand on it.
It's funny, for these positions I have now, I never arrived here thinking, oh yes, and I want to be an administrator. I want to move up through the chain of command and all that. The first step was becoming department chair. And there were certain needs at that time that I had ideas I was really excited about. And so even though I knew it'd be a lot of hard work, I thought, this is the perfect time to try these ideas. And if I become department chair, I'll get to do them. For these new positions, you heard me earlier say how much I love working with students and teaching them. These both involve education. One is very much focused on undergraduate education across the university. The pandemic has been so rough for everyone. And we can all be sad about that. We can all say how complicated it is and how difficult it's going to be to find our way beyond that. But to me, it's another example of a complicated problem. I'm like, there's so much we could do that would contribute toward improving the environment. The other one involves a brand new school at Stanford. The School of Sustainability has only existed since September 1st. And the opportunity to be involved at the very outset with creating kind of educational goals and educational model for a brand new school is so exciting. You just never get that chance. So both of these were hard to pass up just because of how interesting and complicated the challenges were. But it had nothing to do with a bucket list or this is the level I want to get to.
Where will your dreams and aspirations take you next?
I don't know. Let me think. I'm excited. Both of these positions are 3-year positions. I'm excited to see how many of the ideas I have can be implemented or get started. And it's just as fun to get to learn a whole bunch of new things and to talk with people about these ideas you have. I do a lot of I'll think of really out of the box ideas, and then I'll chat with a lot of people about them. People I trust who are not going to be like, oh God, and run around and tell everyone, what Lynn just said, but who will talk back to me and either say, oh, I really like this part, or have you thought about that part? And so that's just part of my process for kind of figuring out, what's going to fly, what's going to really have a wonderful chance of success that I should push ahead on. But no, I haven't thought much beyond that, just because the next 3 years are going to be so exciting for me.
From leading a research lab to taking on these administrative positions, how has your career experiences taught you to lead a group of brilliant minds? What have you learned most about mentorship?
Well, it's when you're a department chair, you're not really leading the faculty any more than you would be herding cats. It's everyone has their own research program, their own mind. They work quite independently. And so it's really more about gaining buy-in for your ideas and getting enough people really excited about them to be able to do it. And it's not that dissimilar with students. If you've got a real new, different idea for educating, you don't want to just foist it on them and say, oh yeah, this is the right thing. It may sound terrible to you right now, but I think it's going to work. You do a lot of talking with them and listening to their concerns and brainstorming with them as equals about, how do you think this would work? How do you think that would work? And that's really fun. That's really fun to gain a stronger understanding of what you should be considering.
If you could tell the world, especially the younger generation, one thing, what would it be?
What would I tell the world, the younger generation? I would say that you have the power to make a difference. And that is how I'm approaching this new School of Sustainability. Stanford's a really well-known university. We cannot, by ourselves, solve the sustainability challenges facing our planet. But my hope working in education, or my goal, I should say, is to educate so many students in how to make changes in their own fields that will lead to better sustainability, to make them throughout the world, not just here in the United States. And that is how we're going to amplify our effect, to go way, way beyond Stanford. And that's very exciting.
All right, everyone. Thank you so much for watching. And thank you so much.